This is Hassan Khomeini, grandson of Ruhollah Khomeini, founder of the Islamic Republic, and you're going to see and hear him speak now. Something that has already completely shaken the peace agreement even before it was finalized.
Yes, for sure, because of this immense kindness that God has shown us, even though in reality we were not even worthy or deserving of such grace. Pure blood was shed, and some names were spoken by us. Maybe it was an act of kindness, a grace that came from Him. This outcome came to us. With you by my side, time is on my side, eternal kindness and enthusiasm are with me. Well, that's the result of it. If you want to preserve this, you really need those conflicts that are fruitless. Which are the result of these ideas? Stop it. Secondly, the more we strive from now on, starting today, we will be initiating the greater jihad. All those 39 days, according to the Prophet, were the lesser jihad. From today on, it is the greater jihad. To maintain this victorious result, we now need to start this greater jihad within ourselves. Then we will become more humble toward others. So the more we are able to strive, the clearer and more evident it will become that in these 39 days, the country's capacity is much greater than the result we got from them. We must carry out a complete blockade by sea, Minister. Before the start of the meeting, many said we would be able to overcome this challenge by using a new strategy. That same strategic attitude of the Americans can bring down the great giants of the world as we know them. The capacity of the Islamic Republic and the Iranian people is much greater than what we have taken from this situation. Music, music, music.
Music. The statement was made in Iran during a meeting with managers from the Ministry of Agricultural Jihad, but the political weight of the phrase goes far beyond the agricultural sector. It comes at the exact moment when Trump is trying to lock the Iranian regime into a deal and prevent Tehran from selling defeat as victory. The Iranian religious faction reacts like someone who feels the noose tightening. Instead of acknowledging the military strain, the isolation, and the internal cost, it tries to reorganize the narrative and prepare society for a new phase of resistance. It's not a formal declaration of conventional war, but it's a heavy ideological message against Israel, against the United States, and against any real concession. When a symbolic figure of the regime talks about a greater jihad right after a war, the question remains, what is Tehran preparing? Why did this statement come now? How will Trump and Israel react to this new religious code? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of direct and straightforward content, consider subscribing, because here we have videos like this every day. Hassan Khomeini showed up trying to turn the post-war period into political mobilization. The statement published by Iranian sources says that the Iranian people would have been the absolute winners of the recent war, that the previous 39 days were the lesser jihad, and that now the greater jihad would begin. He also called for an end to internal disputes and argued that Iranian society should increase its capacity for resistance to preserve what he called a victory. The message is simple to understand. The regime wants to avoid internal cracks, prevent the population from holding the regime accountable for the price of the war, and keep alive the image of strength against Israel and the United States. The meeting took place in Iran before officials linked to the Ministry of Agricultural Jihad. The bureaucratic setting does not lessen the political impact. Hassan Khomeini is not just any figure in the Iranian system. He carries the last name of the founder of the Islamic Republic and speaks to a religious base that understands every word as a sign of direction. When he uses the expression greater jihad, he tries to shift the war from the military sphere to the internal, moral, social, and political sphere. In other words, the religious wing calls on the population to endure more pressure, accept more sacrifice, and remain aligned with the regime. That's where the phrase Islamism exposes Tehran's delicate moment. The regime has just gone through a war against the United States, and Israel saw its military structure come under pressure. It saw the Strait of Hormuz become the center of the crisis and now has to deal with an agreement brokered by Trump under close international scrutiny. The Iranian government tries to say it resisted, while the religious faction tries to say it won. But the very wording of the call shows that the regime knows the war hasn't truly ended within Iranian society. The next battle is for internal obedience. At the G7 meeting, leaders of major nations supported the American plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and extended the still fragile ceasefire. While Trump says the agreement prevents Tehran from advancing toward a nuclear weapon, other leaders are demanding a next step. Because the memorandum still leaves dangerous points out of the document, the Iranian regime is trying to buy time in this gap. Hassan Khomeini's statement matches this movement. Outwardly, Tehran negotiates. Inwardly, it calls for resistance to the external audience. It talks about agreement, ceasefire, and opening Hormuz for the internal base, and talks about jihad, victory, and sacrifice. This duplicity is exactly what worries Israel and Trump's allies. Diplomacy may try to hold back the conflict, but the regime's ideological machine continues to fuel the idea of prolonged confrontation. Israel viewed this situation with suspicion. The Israeli government had already made it clear that it does not feel bound by any agreement, that it does not consider its own security interests. Benjamin Netanyahu stated that, with or without an agreement, Iran will not have nuclear weapons. Hassan Khomeini tries to sell another version to the public. He speaks of victory, but calls for resistance, speaks of unity, but admits that there are internal disputes, speaks of greater jihad, but places this new phase within society. The regime knows that external war brings internal pressure, families under strain, a stalled economy, sanctions, fear, isolation, and a loss of trust do not disappear. With religious discourse, greater jihad is presented within the religious tradition as an internal struggle, inner discipline, control, and resistance. But within a regime like the Iranian one, this language takes on a political function. It tells the people that complaining, causing division, asking questions, or making demands can be treated as weakness in the face of the enemy. The phrase becomes an instrument of social control. The problem was never just the written agreement. The problem is the pressure network created by Tehran around Israel, in the Gulf, and in various parts of the Middle East. The attempt to prepare a second phase against Israel appears more in the language than in an explicit military order. The regime doesn't need to announce a new war in an official decree. To keep the conflict alive, it's enough to invoke the language of resistance, portray Israel as a permanent enemy, treat the agreement as a tactical step, and call on the population to endure new pressures. That's the mechanism that worries me. The war may cool down on the military front, but keep burning in religious rhetoric. After weeks of war, economic pressure, and uncertainty, different factions of the regime are fighting over what comes next. One side wants to negotiate to catch a break, while the other wants to toughen up so they don't look defeated. Israel is watching this game closely because they already know the pattern. The regime needs the people to believe they suffered because they won, not because they were led into confrontation, of course. I'm Milson Alves, Global, and my purpose is to keep you truly informed every day. The news links are in the video description. Like this video, subscribe, and check the comments at the end to engage more with the community. Milson Alves.